They made their way through the crowd, careful to avoid drawing attention. As they navigated the throng of people, Jamal felt a sense of urgency building within him. They needed to find information, and they needed it fast. Suddenly, Maya's eyes narrowed as she spotted a group of men gathered near the bar, their demeanor tense and serious. "Let's see what they're talking about," she suggested, leading them toward the group. Jamal's heart raced as they edged closer, straining to hear snippets of conversation. The men spoke in low voices, but he caught enough to know they were discussing their operations and a shipment scheduled for the following week. Jamal exchanged a glance with Maya, who nodded subtly, urging him to stay focused. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. "I did," Jamal replied, his pulse quickening. "This could be the break we need." As the conversation continued, Jamal felt a surge of adrenaline. They had to gather as much information as possible without getting caught. But just as they leaned in closer, one of the men turned, his gaze locking onto Jamal's. A sense of dread washed over him as the man's expression hardened. "Hey, you?" the man shouted, his voice cutting through the music. Panic surged through Jamal, and he exchanged frantic glances with Maya and Sarah. "Run!" Maya shouted, and they bolted toward the exit, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They pushed through the crowd, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them as they raced for the door. Jamal's heart hammered in his chest, the fear of being caught propelling them forward. Just as they burst through the door, a hand grabbed Jamal's shoulder, yanking him back. "Got you?" The man snarled, but Jamal quickly twisted away, adrenaline driving him as he broke free. They dashed into the night, the sounds of the club fading behind them, but the threat still loomed. They could hear the men shouting and chasing after them, their angry voices echoing through the streets. "Where do we go?" Sarah gasped, her breath coming in quick bursts. "Follow me," Maya shouted, leading them down a side street. They ran through darkened alleyways, their lungs burning as they fought to escape the men on their tail. Jamal felt the weight of their pursuers bearing down on them, the urgency of the moment palpable. They ducked into a narrow passage, their bodies pressed against the cool brick walls as they tried to catch their breath. "We can't keep running like this," Sarah panted, her face pale. "They'll find us." "We need to regroup and find another way to get the information," Maya said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We can't let them win." Jamal nodded, determination surging within him. "We'll find a way. We can't back down now." As they continued to catch their breath, Jamal's mind raced with possibilities. They needed a new plan, a way to gather the evidence they needed without putting themselves in danger. But just as they began to strategize, a piercing scream echoed through the alley, freezing them in their tracks. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Maya said, her brow furrowing, "but we need to check it out." They moved cautiously, the sounds of the city fading away as they ventured deeper into the shadows. The air felt charged with tension, and Jamal's heart raced as they approached the source of the scream. As they turned a corner, they stumbled upon a scene that sent chills down their spines. A group of men surrounded a woman, their intentions clear as they closed in on her. Jamal felt a surge of anger and fear. "We can't just stand by," he said, his voice rising. Maya nodded, her eyes fierce. "We have to help her." They charged forward, adrenaline surging as they confronted the men. "Hey, leave her alone," Maya shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. The men turned, surprise flickering in their eyes as they shifted their focus from the woman to the trio. Jamal felt his heart race as he prepared for a fight, knowing they were outnumbered but unwilling to back down. "Who do you think you are?" one of the men sneered, taking a step forward. "We're not going to let you hurt her," Jamal replied, his voice firm. The men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. But just as it seemed they might back down, one of them lunged at Jamal, fists raised. Jamal instinctively dodged, adrenaline flooding his system as he swung back, connecting with the man's jaw. The impact sent the man stumbling back, but the fight was far from over. Maya and Sarah quickly jumped in, throwing punches and kicks as they worked together to fend off the attackers. Jamal felt a rush of exhilaration as they fought, the adrenaline fueling his actions as they pushed back against the men. But just as they seemed to gain the upper hand, the sound of sirens pierced the night air, echoing through the alley. "Cops!" one of the men shouted, panic flashing in his eyes. The attackers hesitated for a moment, before turning to flee, leaving Jamal and his friends standing over the woman they had just saved. "Are you okay?" Maya asked, concern etched on her face as she knelt beside the woman. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with gratitude and fear. I think so," she stammered. Thank you. Jamal felt a surge of relief wash over him. We have to get you out of here. It's not safe. The woman nodded, tears glistening in her eyes as she accepted their help. I saw everything. I know who they are. I can help you, she said, her voice trembling. Jamal's heart raced at the thought. What do you know? He pressed, urgency in his tone. They're part of a larger organization, she said, her voice steadying. They've been trafficking women and running illegal operations out of the club. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. We need to expose them, Jamal said, determination flooding his veins. Exactly, Maya replied, her eyes sparkling with resolve. This is our chance to gather the evidence we need. With the sirens drawing closer, they knew they had to act fast. They helped the woman to her feet and began to lead her away from the chaos, the weight of their mission settling heavily on their shoulders. As they moved through the darkened streets, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, Jamal felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had a chance to turn the tide, to expose the truth, and take down the organization that had threatened their lives. But even as they made their escape, a nagging feeling lingered at the back of Jamal's mind. The stakes were higher than ever, and they were far from safe. They needed to be prepared for whatever came next. As they ventured deeper into the city, the darkness around them felt alive with danger. The threat of the organization loomed larger than ever, and Jamal could sense that the battle was only just beginning. With newfound resolve, they pressed forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight for the truth, determined to shine a light on the darkness that threatened to consume them. As they hurried down the darkened streets, Jamal, Maya, and Sarah kept a close eye on their surroundings, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. The woman they had rescued, who introduced herself as Lisa, stumbled slightly as she tried to keep pace with them, her face a mixture of gratitude and fear. Jamal felt a surge of protectiveness toward her, knowing they were all in danger until they could expose the organization that had been terrorizing her and so many others. What's the plan? Sarah asked, glancing over her shoulder, her eyes wide with apprehension. We can't just go back to the club. They'll be looking for us. Maya nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. We need a safe place to regroup and figure out our next move, she replied, her tone steady despite the chaos of night. We can't let this moment slip away. If Lisa knows anything about their operations, we need to get that information. We could head to my apartment, Jamal suggested, trying to keep his voice calm. It's not far, and it'll be safer than being out here. Let's go, Maya agreed. As they continued down the street, the tension hung thick in the air. Each shadow seemed to shift, and every sound echoed ominously in Jamal's ears. They kept their voices low, whispering their thoughts and fears, aware that danger lurked just around the corner. When they finally reached Jamal's apartment, he hesitated for a moment before unlocking the door. What if someone had followed them? What if the men from club were already waiting for them? But there was no turning back now. They needed to push through, to find a way to fight back against the darkness. He opened the door, ushering everyone inside before locking it securely behind them. The small space felt safe, but Jamal knew they couldn't let their guard down. Let's get some lights on, Maya said, quickly moving to the window to draw the curtains. We don't want to be seen from outside. Lisa glanced around the apartment, taking in the modest furnishings and the stacks of books that lined the shelves. Jamal could see her trembling slightly, and it broke his heart. She had been through so much, and the fear of what might happen next was written all over her face. Are you okay? He asked gently, stepping closer to her. I will be, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. I just can't believe what happened back there. Thank you for helping me. We couldn't just stand by and do nothing, Jamal replied, feeling a sense of urgency wash over him. You said you know about their operations. Can you tell us more? Lisa nodded, taking a deep breath as she gathered her thoughts. I've been working at the club for a few months. At first, I thought it was just a regular bar, but then I started to see things. Things I shouldn't have. What do you mean? Sarah pressed, her eyes focused intently on Lisa. I saw the men you fought, Lisa continued, her voice trembling. They weren't just patrons. They were involved in the trafficking operations. They would bring women into the club, and I realized they were being sold to the highest bidder. Jamal felt a chill run down his spine. He had known there was something sinister about the club, but hearing it from someone who had witnessed it made the reality hit harder. Do you have any evidence? Anything we can use? Lisa nodded, her eyes widening. I managed to take some pictures with my phone before they caught on. I thought it might come in handy. I just didn't expect to need it so soon. Can we see? Maya asked, leaning forward in anticipation. Lisa reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she navigated to the photos. She handed it to Jamal, and he felt his heart race as he scrolled through the images. There were pictures of men in dark suits, exchanging money, and women looking lost and afraid, standing in the corners of the club. "This is incredible," Jamal said, feeling a surge of hope. "We can take this to the police. They'll have to act." "Not yet," Maya interjected, her voice firm. "We need to be careful. If they find out we have this evidence, we could be putting ourselves in even more danger. We have to come up with a solid plan first." "Right," Jamal said reluctantly, feeling the weight of the decision. He had thought they might finally have a way to fight back, but he knew Maya was right. "What do we do then?" Maya leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "We need to gather more information. We need to figure out who else is involved and how we can get the authorities to take us seriously." Lisa nodded, her determination returning. "I can help with that. I have some contacts at the club. I can get information without raising suspicion. I just need a little time." "Are you sure?" Jamal asked, concern etched in his voice. "It's dangerous." "I'm sure," Lisa replied, her voice steady. "I can't let them keep hurting people. I won't stand by anymore." Jamal felt a sense of admiration for her bravery. "Okay, then let's come up with a plan." They spent the next hour brainstorming, each idea building upon the last. Jamal felt a sense of camaraderie forming between them, a shared determination to fight back against the darkness that threatened their lives. "Here's what we can do," Maya said, her eyes shining with resolve. "Lisa can go back to the club tomorrow night, act like nothing happened, and try to gather information about the organization's next move. Meanwhile, we can figure out how to connect with the police." "That sounds risky," Jamal replied, his voice laced with concern. "What if they recognize you? What if something goes wrong?" "We'll be in constant contact," Maya assured him. "We can set up a code word so Lisa can let us know if she's in trouble. If anything seems off, we'll get her out of there." "Okay," Jamal said reluctantly. "I trust you both. But we have to be careful. I don't want to lose anyone else." As they finalized their plan, Jamal felt a sense of purpose settle over him. They were no longer just victims, they were fighters, ready to take a stand against the organization that had tormented Lisa and so many others. But as the hours passed, and they prepared for the next day, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The tension in the air felt palpable, a sense of impending doom lurking just beyond their sight. The next day dawned, the sun shining bright in the clear sky, but Jamal felt a storm brewing within him. He couldn't focus, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He kept checking his phone, waiting for any word from Maya or Lisa. Around noon, a message pinged on his screen. It was Maya. "Just got word from Lisa. She's in place at the club. Keep your phone close." Jamal felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. They were on the verge of something significant, but he couldn't shake the feeling of dread creeping up on him. As evening fell, he paced the apartment, his heart racing with anticipation. He glanced at his phone, willing it to buzz with updates. He and Sarah had set up the living room with snacks and drinks, trying to create a sense of normalcy, but the tension hung heavy in air. Finally, as the clock struck 8, Jamal received a text from Lisa. "Everything is fine. Just got here. Acting normal. I'll keep you updated." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, but the sense of unease remained. The clock ticked on, each second stretching out like an eternity. They were relying on Lisa's bravery to gather information, but the weight of the danger loomed larger than ever. Just as Jamal began to relax, his phone buzzed again, but this time it was a message from Maya. "Lisa says she overheard something. They're planning something big tonight. I'll call you when she's ready to leave." Jamal's heart dropped. This was it. They had to act fast. He felt a surge of urgency as he glanced at Sarah, who was busy scrolling through her phone, her expression focused. "We need to be prepared," he said, pacing the room. "If Lisa is in danger, we can't just sit here." "I'm ready," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "What do you want to do?" "Let's keep our phones charged and stay close. If anything goes wrong, we need to be able to reach her." As the hours crept by, tension gnawed at Jamal's insides. He felt a knot tightening in his stomach, and every little noise outside made him jump. At around 10, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maya. "She's ready to leave. They're closing up soon." Jamal felt a rush of adrenaline as he quickly grabbed his jacket. "Let's go," he said, determination fueling his movements. They raced out of the apartment and into the cool night air, heading towards the club. The streets felt empty, the silence amplifying the tension in their hearts. As they approached the club, Jamal could see the faint glow of the neon lights flickering in the darkness. His heart pounded in his chest. They had come too far to turn back now. They waited in the shadows, peering through the windows, as the last patrons trickled out of the club. Jamal's phone buzzed again, and he quickly glanced at it. It was another message from Maya. "She's coming out now. Get ready." They all held their breath, waiting for Lisa to appear. And then finally, they saw her. She stepped out of the club, her face a mixture of relief and fear as she scanned the street. But just as she spotted them, a figure emerged from the shadows behind her. "Lisa!" Jamal shouted, his voice echoing in the night. But it was too late. The figure lunged toward her, grabbing her arm with a fierce grip. "Run!" Maya screamed. Jamal's heart raced as he dashed forward, his instincts kicking in. He could feel the urgency coursing through him as he charged toward them, every muscle in his body screaming for him to act. Lisa struggled against her captor, fear evident in her eyes. "Let me go," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. But the man held tight, his grip unyielding. Jamal felt rage boiling within him as he pushed forward, ready to fight for Lisa's freedom. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. He could see the determination in Lisa's eyes, the fear in her voice, and he knew he had to do something. As he reached them, he threw a punch at the man, catching him off guard. The man stumbled back, and Jamal quickly stepped between Lisa and her captor, ready to protect her at all costs. "Get away from her!" he shouted, adrenaline surging through him. The man recovered quickly, sneering as he sized Jamal up. "You shouldn't have gotten involved, kid," he growled, stepping forward as he prepared to retaliate. The world around them felt charged with energy, every second stretching into an eternity. Jamal could hear Sarah and Maya shouting, urging him to be careful, but all he could focus on was Lisa's terrified expression. In that split second, he knew that this was not just about them anymore. It was about every life that had been torn apart by the darkness surrounding them. They were in the fight of their lives, and there was no turning back. The man lunged at Jamal, fists flying, and the chaos erupted around them. Jamal felt the rush of adrenaline, his instincts kicking in as he fought back. Each punch felt like a battle for survival, every move fueled by the determination to save Lisa and bring justice to those who had suffered. But as the fight intensified, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that they were still outmatched. The man was skilled, and as their fists collided, Jamal could see that the darkness they were facing was more powerful than he had imagined. Just as he was about to land a solid punch, the man turned and shoved Lisa back toward Club, his eyes flashing with malice. "You think you can save her? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Jamal's heart sank. In that moment, he realized that this was just beginning. They had awakened something much larger than themselves, and fight was far from over. "Get inside," Maya shouted, urging Lisa to safety as she stepped closer to Jamal, ready to back him up. But as Lisa stumbled toward the entrance, figure moved with surprising speed, blocking her path. "You think you can just walk away?" he sneered, pulling a weapon from his jacket, the metallic glint catching the light. Jamal's heart raced as he felt the fear enveloping him, but he couldn't let it show. "Leave her alone," he shouted, adrenaline fueling his words. The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Jamal felt a sense of dread wash over him. They were in deep, and there was no guarantee that they would make it out alive. Suddenly, Sarah lunged forward, her courage catching Jamal off guard. "You can't take her," she yelled, standing between Lisa and the man, her fists clenched in defiance. Jamal couldn't believe what he was seeing. They were in a situation that could turn deadly in an instant, but Sarah stood tall, unwavering in her resolve. But before Jamal could react, the man raised his weapon, and time seemed to slow. Jamal felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he shouted for Sarah to get back. "Run!" he cried, desperation flooding his voice. And then everything erupted into chaos. The sound of a gunshot rang out, reverberating through the night like thunder. But the moment felt surreal. Jamal's heart raced as he saw Sarah fall to the ground, the shock of the moment hitting him like a wave. "Sarah!" Jamal screamed, panic coursing through him. He rushed to her side, kneeling beside her, his hands shaking as he tried to assess the damage. Lisa stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror, and Maya rushed to Jamal's side, her expression a mix of horror and disbelief. "We need to call for help," Maya shouted, her voice breaking. But Jamal couldn't focus on anything else. Sarah lay on the ground, her breathing shallow, and he could feel the life draining from her. Stay with me, Sarah. Please, he urged, panic rising within him. I'm okay, she gasped, her voice strained. Just help her. Jamal felt his heart shatter as he glanced back at Lisa, who stood there, tears streaming down her face, the fear in her eyes reflecting his own. The man had disappeared into the shadows, but Jamal could still feel the weight of the darkness pressing in around them. They were outmatched, caught in a web of chaos that seemed impossible to escape. Stay with me, Sarah, Jamal pleaded, feeling helpless as he held her hand. Get her out, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. We can't let them win. Jamal felt a surge of anger mixed with grief. They had come too far to lose now. He couldn't let Sarah's sacrifice be in vain. As he looked at Lisa, he felt a renewed determination. They would fight back, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had suffered at the hands of the organization. Lisa, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. We're going to make this right. We need to get to the police, and we need to do it now. Maya nodded, her eyes fierce with resolve. We can't let them silence us. We'll find a way to expose them. But as Jamal helped Sarah, he knew that the fight was far from over. The darkness still loomed, and they had to face it head-on. In that moment, as they moved forward, Jamal realized that their battle was just beginning. The stakes were higher than ever, and they would stop at nothing to bring justice to those who had been wronged. As they hurried toward the nearest police station, Jamal's heart raced with the weight of their mission. They had to be smart, careful, and above all, brave. But the fear of what lay ahead was palpable, each step echoing the uncertainty of their future. The tension hung heavy in the air as they made their way through the darkened streets, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist around them. Jamal felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he knew they had come too far to turn back now. Keep moving, he urged, his voice steady as he glanced at Lisa. We'll get through this. But as they approached the police station, the sense of dread began to creep back in. What if they weren't taken seriously? What if they were met with skepticism instead of support? When they reached the entrance, Jamal pushed the door open, the sound echoing ominously in the silence. Inside, the station felt cold and sterile, the bright lights harsh against the shadows. Is anyone here? Maya called out, her voice carrying through the empty room. A uniformed officer stepped forward, eyeing them with suspicion. What's going on? He asked, crossing his arms. Jamal felt a wave of frustration wash over him. We need to report a crime. Lives are at stake. Calm down, the officer replied, his tone dismissive. What are you talking about? Jamal took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. We have evidence of a trafficking operation. It's happening at a club nearby, and we need your help to stop it. The officer raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Do you have any proof? Lisa stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. I have pictures. I've seen the transactions. People are being hurt, and we need your help. But as they spoke, Jamal could see the officer's skepticism deepening. You expect me to believe that? Where's your evidence? Jamal felt a rush of anger. It's right here. We can't waste any more time. But the officer just shook his head, his expression cold and dismissive. Without solid proof, I can't do anything. You need to have more than just stories. As Jamal's heart sank, he felt the weight of despair closing in around them. They had come here seeking help, and yet they were met with disbelief. We're telling the truth, Maya insisted, desperation in her voice. We're risking our lives to come here. But the officer remained unmoved, and Jamal could feel the darkness creeping back in. It was as if the very forces they were fighting against had seeped into the walls of the station, threatening to engulf them once more. Let's go, Jamal finally said, his voice heavy with defeat. We can't stay here. As they turned to leave, Jamal felt a sense of hopelessness wash over him. They had to find another way, but the road ahead felt more treacherous than ever. They stepped back into the cool night air, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Jamal could feel the anger and frustration bubbling within him, but he knew they had to stay focused. We need to find a way to gather more evidence, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We can't give up. But even as he spoke, Jamal felt a sense of foreboding settling over them. The darkness was still lurking, and they would have to face it again. As they moved further away from the station, Jamal glanced back, a shiver running down his spine. They had entered a world of shadows, and the danger was far from over. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. It was a message from Maya. We need to meet. It's urgent. Jamal's heart raced as he read the words. What could be so urgent now? They had just left the police station, and now it seemed that trouble was following them. "Let's go," he said, determination hardening his resolve. They would not be silenced, not when lives were at stake. The streets felt alive with tension as they made their way to the designated meeting spot. Each footstep echoed in the stillness of the night, and Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. When they arrived, Maya was waiting for them, her expression serious. "I've got information," she said, urgency lacing her voice. "What did you find?" Jamal asked, his heart pounding with anticipation. "There's a party happening at the club tomorrow night," she explained. "I overheard them talking about it. They're bringing in more victims." Jamal felt a surge of anger at the thought of innocent lives being exploited. "We have to stop it," he declared. Maya nodded, her eyes fierce with determination. "We need to gather as much evidence as we can. This is our chance." As they plotted their next move, Jamal could feel the tension mounting. They were entering dangerous territory, but there was no turning back now. The thought of what lay ahead sent chills down his spine, but they were fueled by the desire for justice. They would fight against the darkness that had claimed so many lives. As night fell, Jamal felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on his shoulders. Would they be able to save those in danger? Would they be able to confront the evil that lurked in the shadows? In the silence that followed, Jamal knew that the climax of their journey was approaching. Every decision they made from that point forward would hold the weight of their mission. Tomorrow night would be the turning point, and the stakes couldn't be higher. They would have to face their fears, confront the darkness, and find the strength to fight back. With their resolve strengthened, they prepared for what lay ahead. They would not back down. They would not be silenced. This was their fight, and they were ready to take it on. As they parted ways for the night, Jamal felt a mixture of fear and determination. The shadows were closing in, but they were more than just victims. They were warriors ready to reclaim their lives. Tomorrow would be day when they would confront darkness head-on, and they would do everything in their power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The night felt heavy with anticipation, and as Jamal lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the time for action was drawing near. The climax of their story awaited, and they were ready to meet it with everything they had. The air was thick with tension as Jamal, Maya, and their small group of allies huddled in the dimly lit back room of a cafe, the flickering fluorescent lights barely illuminating their faces. They had spent the last few hours strategizing, poring over maps and information Maya had gathered about the club, where the party was set to take place. It was a well-known spot in the city, vibrant and chaotic, where people came to lose themselves in music and dance. But behind the scenes, Jamal knew it was a front for something far darker: human trafficking. Maya pointed to the club on the map, her finger tracing the route they would take to infiltrate the party. "We need to get inside, without drawing attention," she said, her voice steady despite fear that lurked in her eyes. "Once we're in, we can find victims and gather evidence." Jamal nodded, his heart racing with anticipation. "We'll split up. Some of us can create a distraction, while others slip in unnoticed. Once we're inside, we'll stick to plan. We can't afford any mistakes." The group murmured in agreement, each face reflecting a mix of determination and anxiety. Jamal could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. Lives were at stake, and the time for action was finally upon them. As they finalized their plans, Jamal felt a familiar knot of worry tighten in his stomach. What if they were caught? What if they failed? But he pushed those thoughts aside, channeling his energy into focus. They had come too far to turn back now. Night fell, and as they approached the club, the pulsating beats of music spilled out into the street, vibrating through the air. The neon lights flashed, drawing in a crowd of revelers, oblivious to the danger lurking just beneath the surface. Jamal felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, his senses heightened as they neared the entrance. They split into pairs, Jamal and Maya, moving toward the side entrance, while others made their way to create the distraction. "Stay close," Jamal whispered, as they navigated the narrow alley, shadows stretching around them. Once inside, the atmosphere enveloped them, a chaotic whirlwind of sound, light, and movement. Jamal could feel the energy pulsing around him, but it felt like a false front. Beneath the glamour and excitement, he sensed the fear and desperation that had brought them here. They moved through the crowd, scanning faces, searching for any sign of the victims Maya had described. The bar was busy, people laughing and dancing, but Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was lurking just beyond the surface. Over there, Maya pointed toward a dimly lit corner where a group of young women stood, their expressions dazed, lost. Jamal felt a surge of anger. It was clear they were trapped in a web of manipulation. "Let's go," he said, gripping Maya's arm gently as they weaved through the crowd. They approached the women, hoping to engage them without drawing too much attention. As they got closer, Jamal's heart sank. He recognized one of them, a girl from his neighborhood, who had gone missing weeks ago. "Sophia?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. Her eyes widened in recognition, but fear quickly overshadowed her relief. "Jamal? You shouldn't be here," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "They'll find you." "We're here to help," Maya said, her tone gentle but firm. "Can you tell us how many are here? Where are the others?" Sophia hesitated, glancing back toward the darkened corners of the club. "There are more in the back. They're not safe. They keep them locked away." Jamal felt a chill run down his spine. "We have to get you all out of here," he insisted, glancing around to ensure they weren't being watched. But just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, a burly man with a menacing presence, his eyes scanning the crowd. Jamal's instincts kicked in. They were running out of time. "We need to go, now." Before they could move, the man's gaze landed on them, his expression darkening. "What do you think you're doing?" he growled, stepping closer. Jamal felt a rush of adrenaline. "We're just here to dance," he said, forcing a casual tone despite the pounding of his heart. The man wasn't convinced. "You're in the wrong place. Get out, or I'll make you." "Run!" Jamal shouted, and without hesitation, he grabbed Sophia's arm and pulled her along as they dashed through the throng of bodies. Maya was right behind them, her breath heavy with exertion. They zigzagged through the club, desperately trying to evade capture. The pounding music and flashing lights felt like a trap, and Jamal's heart raced with fear and urgency. "We need to find the others," he yelled over the noise, his voice strained. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Someone had set off a smoke bomb, and club filled with a thick, acrid cloud. Panic spread like wildfire, as people stumbled and shouted, desperate to escape the disorienting haze. "Over here," Maya shouted, grabbing Jamal's arm and leading them toward a door marked staff only. They burst through, finding themselves in a narrow hallway, lined with dimly lit rooms. Jamal pushed open the first door, revealing a small storage space filled with boxes and supplies. "No one here," he muttered, frustration bubbling up inside him. They moved down the hall, checking each door. In third room, they found a group of young women huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. "Help us," one of them cried, her voice trembling. "It's okay. We're here to get you out," Maya reassured them, her tone calm. "But we need to be quick." Jamal felt a surge of determination. "Let's go. Follow us." As they led the women out, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jamal's heart sank. "We're not alone," he whispered urgently. "Quick, in here." Maya pulled them into a nearby room, slamming the door shut just as the footsteps grew louder. They held their breath, straining to listen. Through the door, they heard voices gruff and angry, threatening. "They can't have gone far. Find them." Jamal felt panic rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. They couldn't get caught now, not when they were so close to saving everyone. As the voices faded, Jamal turned to the group of women. "We need to move. We're going to get you out of here." They slipped out of the room, moving stealthily down the hall, hearts pounding in unison. The exit was just ahead, but as they neared the door, they heard voices again. This time, they were closer, and Jamal felt his stomach drop. Where did they go? The same men from before were searching, their voices full of rage. "We can't go that way," Maya said, looking frantically around. "We have to find another exit." Just then, Jamal noticed a fire escape sign at the far end of the hall. "This way," he urged, leading the group toward the stairs. They raced up the steps, the metal creaking under their weight. Jamal glanced back, fear gripping him as he imagined the men chasing them. They were so close, but the danger was still present. At the top of the stairs, they burst through a door and found themselves on the rooftop, the cool night air hitting them like a slap. The city sprawled beneath them, and Jamal could see the distant glow of streetlights. "Where do we go from here?" one of the women asked, panic rising in her voice. "There." Maya pointed to a ledge that led to the adjoining building. "We can climb down and find a way out from there." Jamal took a deep breath, adrenaline still surging through him. "We can do this," he encouraged, trying to project confidence. One at a time. They began to maneuver across the ledge, fear gnawing at their insides. Jamal led the way, his heart pounding as he reached the edge, and carefully climbed down to the fire escape on the next building. "Come on, you've got this," he called back to the others, urging them on. One by one, the women made it across, and soon, it was only Maya left. She hesitated at the edge, looking down at the ground far below. "I can't," she said, her voice shaking. You can. Jamal insisted, extending his hand. I'm right here. Just trust me. With a deep breath, Maya nodded and leaped across, landing beside him. Relief washed over Jamal as he pulled her into a quick embrace. We did it, he whispered, heart racing. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them, and the men from the club had found their trail. They're on the roof. Don't let them escape. Run, Jamal shouted, and they took off down the fire escape, adrenaline fueling their flight. They could hear shouts behind them, the men growing closer with each passing second. They reached the ground and darted into the alley, desperately searching for a way out. This way. Maya pointed toward a street that led away from the chaos. They sprinted through the darkened streets, their hearts pounding with fear and urgency. They could still hear the shouts of the men behind them, the promise of danger lurking just a step behind. As they turned a corner, Jamal spotted a small diner that appeared to be open. In there? He yelled, leading them toward the entrance. They burst through the door, breathless and wild-eyed. The smell of coffee and greasy food filled the air, but they had no time to stop. Help us! Jamal shouted to the startled patrons and staff. The waitress glanced around, her eyes wide with confusion. What's going on? Please, we're being chased. Call the police. Maya pleaded, her voice trembling. As they waited, Jamal kept his eyes on the door, his heart racing. They had come so close to escaping, and he refused to let them be caught now. Just then, the door swung open, and the men from the club stepped inside, scanning the room with predatory eyes. Jamal felt his heart drop. They're here, he whispered urgently. Stay calm, Maya said, gripping Jamal's arm tightly. We can't let them know we're in here. But as the men approached the counter, their attention shifted. Jamal could see the confusion on their faces as they spoke to the waitress. We're looking for some girls. You seen them? No, I haven't, she replied, her voice shaky. Jamal could feel the tension in the air, the sense of danger creeping closer. What are we going to do? He whispered to Maya, fear knotting in his stomach. Just stay quiet, she replied, her eyes darting around the room. But before they could come up with a plan, one of the men turned toward the back of the diner, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Jamal and the others. I think they're here. Panic erupted as the men lunged toward them, and Jamal felt a surge of adrenaline as he grabbed Maya and the women, pushing them toward the back exit. Go, go, go. They barreled through the kitchen, narrowly avoiding the chaos as the staff scrambled to understand what was happening. Jamal could hear the men shouting behind them, their anger palpable. They burst out the back door, skidding into the alley and sprinting toward the street. Jamal's heart raced as he led the group, adrenaline fueling their escape. Just as they reached the end of the alley, they spotted a police car parked on the street, lights flashing. Over there, Jamal shouted, pointing. The group rushed toward the car, shouting for help. Help us. Please, Maya cried out, waving her arms frantically. The officer inside the car looked up, surprise flashing across his face as he jumped out. What's going on? We're being chased. They're after us, Jamal explained breathlessly. The officer immediately moved into action, calling for backup as he led them toward the safety of his car. Get in. They piled inside, the officer quickly slamming the door shut. Stay down, he ordered, glancing nervously toward the alley. As they waited, the tension in the car was palpable. Jamal could feel the fear swirling around them, but a glimmer of hope sparked inside him. They were safe, at least for the moment. But just then, a roar of engines filled the air, and Jamal's heart sank. They're coming, he shouted. The officer quickly reached for his radio, calling for assistance as he glanced at the approaching cars. Jamal could see the men from the club barreling toward them, their faces twisted with rage. Get ready, the officer warned, gripping the steering wheel tightly. In that moment, Jamal felt a surge of determination. They couldn't let this end here. Not when they had come so far. We have to fight back, he said, adrenaline coursing through him. Maya nodded, her expression fierce. We won't let them take us again. As the men closed in, the officer pressed down on the gas, the car lurching forward. The sound of screeching tires filled the air as they raced away from danger, the city lights blurring past them. But just when it seemed they might escape, a shot rang out, shattering the night. The bullet struck the rear window, causing glass to shatter and fly through the air. Hold on, the officer shouted, swerving to avoid the pursuing cars. Jamal felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he refused to back down. We can't let them win, he yelled, gripping Maya's hand tightly. As the chase continued, Jamal and the others rallied together, determination igniting a fire within them. They weren't going to let fear control their lives any longer. With each turn, they fought back against the looming darkness, each moment fueling their resolve. They wouldn't let these men take away their hope, their freedom, or their lives. Finally, as they rounded a corner, they spotted a police barricade ahead. "There!" the officer shouted, pushing the gas pedal down hard. "We're almost there." As they approached the barricade, Jamal could see officers on the scene, weapons drawn, ready to confront the threat. "We're here. We're safe," he shouted, relief flooding through him. The officer accelerated, barreling toward the barricade just as the pursuing cars closed in. The officers quickly recognized the danger and moved into action, forming a line to block the oncoming cars. The clash was intense, chaos erupting as the officers engaged with the men from the club. Jamal's heart raced as he watched, helpless but filled with hope. They had made it. They had fought back and survived. In the distance, he could see more police cars arriving, lights flashing as they rushed to the scene. The tide was turning, and with it came a sense of victory. As the officers subdued the men from the club, Jamal and the others were ushered to safety, the adrenaline slowly fading as they were enveloped in the warmth of protection. "Are you all okay?" one of the officers asked, concern etched on his face. Jamal nodded, tears of relief welling in his eyes. "We're safe now." Maya squeezed his hand tightly, her eyes shining with gratitude. They had done it. They had fought for their lives, and for the lives of those who had suffered in silence. But just when the weight of their victory settled in, a voice cut through the chaos. "Jamal?" He turned to see Sophia standing beside another officer, her face a mix of relief and disbelief. I thought I'd never see you again." Jamal rushed over, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "You're safe now, I promise," he said, emotion choking his voice. But as the dust began to settle, a new tension crept in. The officer beside them looked serious. "We have to discuss what happened here. There's more going on than we realized." Jamal's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "There's a larger network involved," the officer explained, his tone grave. "This club is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. We need your help to take them down." Maya stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "We'll do whatever it takes." Jamal nodded, his resolve hardening. They had come too far to stop now. "We're in." They burst out the back door, skidding into the alley and sprinting toward the street. Jamal's heart raced as he led the group, adrenaline fueling their escape. Just as they reached the end of the alley, they spotted a police car parked on the street, lights flashing. "Over there," Jamal shouted, pointing. The group rushed toward the car, shouting for help. "Help us. Please," Maya cried out, waving her arms frantically. The officer inside the car looked up, surprise flashing across his face as he jumped out. "What's going on?" "We're being chased. They're after us," Jamal explained breathlessly. The officer immediately moved into action, calling for backup as he led them toward the safety of his car. "Get in." They piled inside, the officer quickly slamming the door shut. "Stay down," he ordered, glancing nervously toward the alley. As they waited, the tension in the car was palpable. Jamal could feel the fear swirling around them, but a glimmer of hope sparked inside him. They were safe, at least for the moment. But just then, a roar of engines filled the air, and Jamal's heart sank. "They're coming," he shouted. The officer quickly reached for his radio, calling for assistance as he glanced at the approaching cars. Jamal could see the men from the club barreling toward them, their faces twisted with rage. "Get ready," the officer warned, gripping the steering wheel tightly. In that moment, Jamal felt a surge of determination. They couldn't let this end here. Not when they had come so far. "We have to fight back," he said, adrenaline coursing through him. Maya nodded, her expression fierce. "We won't let them take us again." As the men closed in, the officer pressed down on the gas, the car lurching forward. The sound of screeching tires filled the air as they raced away from danger, the city lights blurring past them. But just when it seemed they might escape, a shot rang out, shattering the night. The bullet struck the rear window, causing glass to shatter and fly through the air. "Hold on," the officer shouted, swerving to avoid the pursuing cars. Jamal felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he refused to back down. "We can't let them win," he yelled, gripping Maya's hand tightly. As the chase continued, Jamal and the others rallied together, determination igniting a fire within them. They weren't going to let fear control their lives any longer. With each turn, they fought back against the looming darkness, each moment fueling their resolve. They wouldn't let these men take away their hope, their freedom, or their lives. Finally, As they rounded a corner, they spotted a police barricade ahead. "There!" the officer shouted, pushing the gas pedal down hard. "We're almost there." As they approached the barricade, Jamal could see officers on the scene, weapons drawn, ready to confront the threat. "We're here. We're safe," he shouted, relief flooding through him. The officer accelerated, barreling toward the barricade, just as the pursuing cars closed in. The officers quickly recognized the danger and moved into action, forming a line to block the oncoming cars. The clash was intense, chaos erupting as the officers engaged with the men from the club. Jamal's heart raced as he watched, helpless but filled with hope. They had made it. They had fought back and survived. In the distance, he could see more police cars arriving, lights flashing as they rushed to the scene. The tide was turning, and with it came a sense of victory. As the officers subdued the men from the club, Jamal and the others were ushered to safety, the adrenaline slowly fading as they were enveloped in the warmth of protection. "Are you all okay?" one of the officers asked, concern etched on his face. Jamal nodded, tears of relief welling in his eyes. "We're safe now." Maya squeezed his hand tightly, her eyes shining with gratitude. They had done it. They had fought for their lives, and for the lives of those who had suffered in silence. But just when the weight of their victory settled in, a voice cut through the chaos. "Jamal?" He turned to see Sophia standing beside another officer, her face a mix of relief and disbelief. I thought I'd never see you again." Jamal rushed over, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "You're safe now, I promise," he said, emotion choking his voice. But as the dust began to settle, a new tension crept in. The officer beside them looked serious. "We have to discuss what happened here. There's more going on than we realized." Jamal's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "There's a larger network involved," the officer explained, his tone grave. "This club is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. We need your help to take them down." Maya stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "We'll do whatever it takes." Jamal nodded, his resolve hardening. They had come too far to stop now. "We're in." Jamal, Maya, and Sophia, survivors of a dangerous criminal network, joined forces with a group of detectives investigating a larger operation of harassment and disappearances connected to a local club. Determined to stop the organization, they worked alongside the police, gathering evidence and uncovering layers of corruption that reached local politicians and influential figures. Their investigation took a risky turn when Jamal began receiving threatening messages from an unknown source. Despite the increasing danger, they persisted, eventually uncovering a hidden ledger detailing the group's operations and the people involved. With this crucial piece of evidence, they planned a daring operation to infiltrate a meeting at the club, where key players would discuss their next steps. On the night of the operation, Maya posed as a recruit, while Jamal and Officer Harris provided backup. Tensions were high as they navigated the dangerous environment, gathering information while maintaining their cover. A distraction broke out, and Jamal and Harris slipped into a back room where they overheard a critical discussion among the criminals. Jamal recorded the conversation, capturing key details that would be vital in taking down the network. However, they were soon discovered. A burly man confronted Jamal, leading to a chaotic brawl as police stormed the club. Jamal and his allies fought their way through the chaos and escaped, but the threat was far from over. In the following days, the police used the gathered evidence to launch a full-scale investigation, executing arrests and uncovering more names linked to the operation. Despite their success, Jamal remained uneasy as the anonymous sender continued to harass him. The investigation took another twist when Detective Miller traced the unknown number to a private investigator with ties to criminal organizations. The detectives realized this investigator had been monitoring Jamal specifically, increasing the danger they faced. Under police protection, Jamal and Maya devised a plan to lure the investigator out into the open. They set a trap, creating a fake lead that drew the investigator to a designated location. When the moment arrived, Jamal and Officer Harris confronted the investigator, who initially dismissed their efforts as a game. However, the situation escalated, and backup officers arrived to arrest him. As the investigator was taken away, he warned Jamal that they had no idea what they were up against, but Jamal remained resolute. With the investigator apprehended and more arrests made, the operation began to unravel, exposing corruption that shook the city. For the first time in months, Jamal, Maya, and Sophia felt a sense of relief. The streets were safer, and justice had been served. Reflecting on their journey at a diner, the trio finally allowed themselves to relax. Though they knew life could bring new challenges, they were stronger for the battles they had fought together. As the sun set on the city, they embraced the peace they had fought so hard to achieve, ready for whatever the future might bring.